When a woman suddenly notices that the steady stream of calls, messages, or check-ins from you has come to a halt, her very first reaction is rarely calm acceptance. Instead, what fills her mind is a rush of confusion and curiosity. She starts questioning what shifted. She may scroll back through old conversations, reread the last words you shared, and replay them in her head, searching for clues she might have missed. Did he sound different in that last message? Did he seem less enthusiastic than usual? Was there something I said that pushed him away? This cycle of questioning can grow louder the longer the silence stretches, and it's not just about missing the contact. It's about the sudden break in a rhythm she had grown used to. That rhythm, whether she admits it or not, gave her a sense of security, a sense of being noticed, and even a sense of control. When it's interrupted, she feels its absence in a way that is difficult to ignore. At this stage, she often finds herself torn between two conflicting emotions. On one side, there is the sting of pride. Why should she care so much about your absence? She might even tell herself that she doesn't, brushing it off as if it doesn't bother her. But on the other side, curiosity keeps tugging. She wonders where you've gone, what you're doing, and why you aren't doing it with her anymore. And curiosity is powerful because it refuses to stay silent. It sneaks into her thoughts when she's busy, shows up in the middle of her day, and makes her notice things she wouldn't have paid attention to before. She may notice the time on the clock when you would normally reach out. She may check her phone more than usual, hoping to see your name pop up. That's the quiet evidence that she's already thinking about you more than she planned to. What makes this moment so powerful is not the absence of words, but the impact of that absence. Silence has a weight. It forces the other person to sit with their own feelings, and often, those feelings surface more clearly in silence than in constant conversation. When you were the one keeping the connection alive, she didn't have to think deeply about what she felt. She could just respond, engage, and keep moving. But when you step back, she no longer has the luxury of just flowing along. She has to stop and ask herself, do I miss him because he was convenient? Or do I miss him because he mattered? And in that pause, confusion shifts into reflection. This reflection can lead to surprising realizations. Sometimes, a woman may discover that the reason she's thinking about you so much isn't simply because she enjoyed the attention, but because your absence highlights the difference between you and everyone else. She begins to see the subtle ways you stood out. Your consistency, your energy, your humor, or the way you made her feel valued. It's like a song she didn't realize she liked until it stopped playing. Suddenly, the silence makes her aware that something meaningful has been lost, and that awareness is powerful. On the other hand, she might realize she was more attached to the pattern than to you, more invested in the feeling of being wanted than in who was giving her that feeling. Both of these realizations only come when you step back, because only then is she left alone with her thoughts long enough to separate her feelings. And let me be clear, confusion in this stage doesn't always show on the surface. She might still post pictures with a smile, laugh with her friends, or act unbothered if someone asks about you. But underneath that surface, there's often a quiet storm brewing. That's why you'll sometimes see her indirectly checking in, liking your old post, watching your story a little too quickly, or sending a short, random message that doesn't really have a purpose. These are signs of curiosity spilling out into action. She may not want to admit that she's wondering where you've gone, but her behavior starts to reveal it. The beauty of this initial confusion is that it plants a seed. Whether it grows into longing, reflection, or distance depends on what comes after, but in this moment, she is undeniably aware of your absence. And awareness is the first step to any deeper emotional response. Think of it like turning off the background music in a room. People only realize how much it was filling the space when it's no longer there. That's exactly what happens when you stop contacting her. The music cuts off and she notices. So in those first days of silence, when she's caught between curiosity and confusion, when she's scrolling back to check if she missed a clue, when she's staring at her phone longer than she wants to admit, what's really happening is this: she's learning what your presence meant by experiencing your absence. And that realization will guide how she responds next. That is the power of the first reaction. Confusion and curiosity are not signs of weakness, but proof that your silence has already spoken louder than your words ever could. After that first wave of confusion and curiosity sets in, something very interesting happens inside her mind. She doesn't just sit in silence wondering where you went. She begins to test her own emotional response. She wants to know how deeply your absence affects her, because sometimes we don't recognize the true weight of someone until they step out of our daily lives. This testing isn't always intentional. Often it unfolds naturally. She might go through moments where she deliberately tries not to think about you, telling herself, "I don't care, I'll be fine without him." But then, almost like a reflex, she finds herself checking her phone, waiting to see if you finally reached out. And when she notices that the silence is still there, she feels something. That's something, whether it's disappointment, irritation, or even longing, is the very evidence she's testing for. It's fascinating because this stage isn't about you directly. It's about her and her own emotions. She is measuring herself, almost like dipping her toe into cold water to see how strong the chill feels. She might say to herself, "If I really didn't care, then why am I even thinking about this?" That question lingers in her mind, and the more she asks it, the clearer her answers become. Sometimes she'll convince herself that the reason she's noticing the silence is simply because she was used to your attention. But other times, she realizes the truth runs deeper. It's not just about missing the consistency, it's about missing you. That distinction matters more than anything else, because it shows her what place you really held in her heart. This testing phase often leads to behaviors you can see from the outside. You may notice her showing little signs of resistance, like posting things on social media that seem crafted to catch your attention. Maybe she shares a song that has hidden meaning, or she posts a picture where she knows you'll see her looking her best. These aren't coincidences. These are ways she tests herself. Will doing this make him react? And how will I feel if he doesn't? If you stay silent, she pays attention to her own disappointment, and that becomes another measure of how much she truly values your presence. At the same time, she might try the opposite approach. Instead of trying to get your attention, she might go out of her way to appear unaffected. She'll remind herself to stay busy, to laugh with friends, to distract her mind. She does this because she wants to see if she can move on quickly, if your silence really has no effect on her at all. But what usually happens in those moments of distraction is that the quiet thoughts sneak back in. In the middle of the fun, she catches herself thinking about you again, realizing that no matter how much she tries to bury the emotion, it keeps resurfacing. That's the true test way, when your name keeps showing up in her thoughts, even when she tries to push it away. Now, here's the part that most people overlook. These emotional tests aren't only about missing you. Sometimes she uses this silence to test whether her feelings were real or whether they were just shallow excitement. She might ask herself, did I really like him, or did I just like how he made me feel? That internal dialogue is important because it determines her next move. If she realizes she genuinely misses you, that test turns into fuel for her to reach out or to try to find a way back into your attention. But if she concludes that it was only about the feeling of being noticed, she may take that as a sign to pull away completely. Either way, the testing forces her to uncover the truth of her emotions, something she may never have done if you had continued to keep up the contact. This stage is also where pride plays a role. Even if she feels a strong pull towards you, she might not let it show right away. She tests herself by resisting the urge to send that message, resisting the temptation to call, just to see if she can hold out longer than you. Pride and vulnerability collide here because she wants to know if her emotions are stronger than her willpower. And that struggle alone can become exhausting because the more she resists, the more she feels the pressure of what she's trying to avoid. It's like trying not to think about something, you end up thinking about it even more. In this way, your silence creates an invisible mirror for her. Every thought, every reaction, every test she puts herself through reflects her true emotional state back to her. She sees her own feelings more clearly in the space you've created than she ever could have in the noise of constant interaction. And while this might feel frustrating to her, it's also a turning point, because once she knows what your absence really makes her feel, she has no choice but to face it honestly. That's why the testing phase is so important. It strips away the illusions, the distractions, and the surface-level habits. It forces her to sit with herself and confront her emotions without excuses. And in the end, whether those tests reveal longing, attachment, or indifference, The clarity she gains will shape how she chooses to respond to you in the days to come. Her silence may look calm, but inside, the quiet tests have already begun. When you stop contacting a woman, something subtle but powerful begins to shift beneath the surface, and it has everything to do with the balance of power in the connection. While you were the one reaching out, initiating conversations, and keeping the rhythm alive, she was comfortably in a position where she could simply respond. She didn't have to think too much about whether the connection would continue because she knew you were there, keeping it steady. But when that presence fades, the dynamic changes and she feels that shift more than she lets on. At first, she might not call it power. She might not even recognize it consciously. But she starts noticing the way her attention drifts toward you when you're not around. She notices the emptiness of that space where your voice or your messages used to be. And in that realization, she becomes aware of something she may not have noticed before. She doesn't control the situation anymore. For the first time, she has to consider the possibility that the connection is no longer guaranteed. That shift alone can stir emotions she wasn't expecting. When she feels this shift, her pride and her heart often clash. Part of her might want to brush it off, to remind herself that she doesn't need anyone to validate her, that she's just fine without you. And yet, another part of her starts to feel a subtle pull toward you, simply because the certainty she once had is no longer there. It's human nature. When something we're used to is suddenly missing, it becomes more noticeable, more valuable, and sometimes even more desirable. Silence has a way of creating presence, and in this silence, your absence actually makes her think of you more. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The balance of power doesn't shift in a harsh, one-sided way. It shifts in a way that makes her reconsider her role in the connection. She begins to realize that if she wants to keep you in her life, she might have to put in effort too. She can't just rely on your consistency anymore. That awareness often sparks one of two reactions. Either she steps forward to close the gap, or she retreats to protect her pride. Either way, the fact that she even has to make this choice shows how much the dynamic has changed. Sometimes this shift can even trigger attraction in a way she didn't expect. When you stop chasing, you break the pattern she's grown comfortable with. Suddenly, you're no longer predictable, and that unpredictability makes her pay attention. She starts wondering what you're doing, who you're with, and why you've stopped giving her the attention you once freely gave. That wondering creates a sense of mystery, and mystery has a powerful way of drawing people in. She may not admit it, but the more she thinks about why you're not reaching out, the more her curiosity grows. And curiosity often turns into interest, even if she tries to resist it. This doesn't mean she'll always respond with action. Sometimes she'll choose to stay silent, hoping you'll eventually break first. But even in that silence, she's thinking, she's analyzing, and she's feeling the effects of the new dynamic. And if she truly valued your presence, the weight of that silence begins to press harder over time. The simple fact that she no longer holds the comfort of your constant attention means she now has to re-evaluate what the connection means to her. On the other side of this, she may also discover a sense of independence she hadn't noticed before. Without your consistent contact, she might focus on herself more, pour energy into her own life, and enjoy the space that's been created. But even that is part of the shift, because whether she leans into the mystery and attraction or she leans into her independence, the dynamic is no longer the same as it was. You stepping back forces her to adjust, and in that adjustment, she realizes the balance of power has changed. That shift often reveals truths that were hidden while you were doing all the work. It shows her whether she was simply comfortable with the attention or if she genuinely valued you. It shows her whether she's willing to make effort for you or if she only wanted things when they were easy. And it shows her, most importantly, whether your presence was just convenient or truly meaningful. What makes this stage so powerful is that you don't have to say a single word for it to happen. By doing less, you actually create more space for her to think, more space for her to feel, more space for her to recognize the reality of her own emotions. And in that space, she learns that the dynamic has shifted, that the control she once had isn't as steady as she thought, and that the connection only continues if she chooses to step forward too. Silence changes the balance, and when the balance changes, everything she feels about you changes with it. When the silence lingers long enough, something deeper begins to take place inside her. After the initial confusion and the subtle tests of her emotions, and after noticing how the dynamic between you has shifted, she eventually moves into a phase of evaluation. This is where she sits with herself, sometimes consciously, sometimes without even realizing it, and asks the question, what role did you actually play in her life? It's in this quiet space that she starts measuring your importance, not by the words you used to say, but by the impact your absence has left behind. At first, this evaluation may feel like an uninvited thought creeping into her day. She could be at work, surrounded by her tasks, when suddenly she remembers something small you once said that made her smile. She could be with friends, laughing and engaged, when her mind drifts to how different it felt when you were the one making her laugh. That's how evaluation often begins. It sneaks in through the smallest memories and forces her to reflect on whether she misses you as a person or just the energy you brought into her routine. The longer she sits with those moments, the more she notices patterns. She might realize that when she feels tired or stressed, her mind automatically thinks of you because you once gave her comfort. Or she might notice that when she's celebrating something, she wishes you were there to share in the joy. These realizations make her aware of just how much space you occupied in her emotional world. This evaluation isn't always flattering to you, though. Sometimes, when she sits with her thoughts, she may recognize that she was more attached to the idea of you than to who you truly were. Maybe you represented excitement, validation, or consistency. Maybe she enjoyed the attention without fully valuing the person behind it. In those cases, the silence allows her to see the truth more clearly, that what she was clinging to wasn't really about you, but about how you made her feel. That's a powerful shift because it reveals whether the bond was built on depth or convenience. And if it was only about convenience, the evaluation stage gives her the clarity she needs to step away without regret. But if she realizes it was deeper, the evaluation takes on a very different tone. Instead of dismissing you as a temporary distraction, she begins to notice the qualities that set you apart from others. She remembers how your consistency made her feel secure, how your humor lightened her bad days, or how your perspective challenged her to think differently. These aren't small details. They are the markers of importance, the reminders that you were more than just another voice in her phone. And once she identifies those qualities, she has to admit to herself that losing you feels like losing something meaningful. This stage is also where gratitude and regret often mix together. On one hand, she may feel thankful for the way you impacted her, realizing how much value you brought into her world. On the other hand, she may also regret not appreciating it more when it was there. That regret can be heavy, because it makes her question whether she took you for granted. Did she assume you'd always be there? Did she fail to recognize how much effort you were giving? These thoughts can stir emotions that run deeper than simple curiosity. They push her to confront what she truly feels about you. Sometimes, evaluation even exposes her fears. She may wonder if you've already moved on, if someone else now gets the attention she once had, or if she'll ever find another connection that feels the same. Those questions can shake her confidence because they highlight the possibility that she lost something unique. And whether she admits it out loud or not, those fears reveal just how important you were in her story. The truth is, evaluation is uncomfortable, but it's necessary. It forces her to peel back the layers of habit and routine to see the real essence of what you meant to her. It strips away the noise of constant contact and asks her to face the silence with honesty. In that silence, she can't distract herself with your words or your presence. She has to confront the reality of what your absence makes her feel. And that confrontation tells her more than any conversation could. For some women, this process ends with a quiet acknowledgement that you weren't as important as they thought, that they were attached to the attention but not to the person. For others, it ends with the realization that your absence has left a void that no one else has managed to fill. But no matter which way it leans, the outcome of this evaluation is clear. She now knows where you stand in her heart, whether high or low, essential or replaceable. Silence forces her to measure your importance, and the answer she finds will decide everything that comes next. Once she has moved through the stages of confusion, self-testing, and the recognition of a shifting dynamic, and once she's had time to evaluate what you truly mean to her, the silence naturally brings her to a crossroads. This is where thought turns into action. Depending on what she feels during her evaluation, she begins to make decisions about how to respond, and those choices can take very different forms. Her actions in this stage reveal not only how much you matter to her, but also how she chooses to navigate her own pride, emotions, and vulnerability. If she realizes during her reflection that she misses you genuinely, that she values the space you once filled, she may find herself compelled to reach out. It doesn't always come in the form of a direct confession. Rarely will she simply say, "I miss you." Instead, her actions are often subtle, cautious, almost testing the waters. She may send a casual message, something that looks innocent on the surface, like asking about something unrelated or sharing a random memory. On the surface, it's small, but underneath, it's her way of saying, "Are you still open? Do you still see me?" She uses these indirect approaches because they allow her to protect her pride while still opening the door for connection. At times, her actions may not involve words at all. Instead, she might choose to grab your attention through her presence. This could look like posting on social media in ways designed to remind you of her, or showing up in places where she knows you'll notice her activity. She might like your posts, view your stories the moment they go up, or drop little signals that she's still paying attention. These aren't accidents. They're her way of saying, "I'm still here," without actually saying it. The silence has pushed her to act, and her actions become the proof that she feels the absence. But not every woman reacts by reaching out or seeking attention. For some, the silence leads to the opposite choice as she decides to move on. If her evaluation told her that she was more attached to the attention than to the person, or if she realized that she doesn't want to put effort into a connection that isn't mutual, she may begin to close the door completely. She might stop looking for you on her phone, she might avoid reminders of you, and she may even start focusing on new people or opportunities that help her fill the space. On the outside, this can look cold, even final, but it's often her way of protecting herself. By choosing to move forward, she avoids lingering in a silence that could feel like rejection. The interesting thing about this stage is that both responses, reaching out or pulling away, are born from the same root, the impact of your absence. Whether she moves toward you or away from you, her actions are a reaction to the space you created. She has been pushed to decide, and the decision reflects exactly what you mean to her. If you were important, her actions show a desire to reconnect. If you weren't, her actions show her readiness to detach. Either way, the silence brought the truth to the surface in a way that constant contact never could. And within this stage, there's often a tug of war. She may act like she's moving on one day only to find herself tempted to reach out the next. That back and forth is common because emotions are rarely simple. A woman may tell herself she's done, but when the quiet thoughts creep back in, when the memories remind her of how things felt, she might feel compelled to test the connection again. That's why sometimes you'll see a mix of behaviors. She'll ignore you for a while, then suddenly show up in small, noticeable ways. These are the signs of someone caught between pride and longing, between letting go and holding on. What makes this stage powerful is that it reveals action, not just thought. Up until now, the silence has mostly lived in her mind, confusion, self-tests, reflection, shifts in power. But now, her inner world translates into choices you can see. She either leans forward, trying to bridge the silence with her own effort, or she pulls back, choosing to walk away rather than linger in uncertainty. And both actions carry meaning. Both actions show what she has concluded about you, whether you're worth her effort or worth her release. In the end, these actions are less about you and more about what she has discovered about herself through the silence. If she reaches out, it's because she's realized she values what she had. If she moves on, it's because she's realized she doesn't. And that clarity is something she might never have reached if the contact had never stopped. Silence created the space for her to choose, and her actions now are the truth revealed. Her response, whether it's a quiet message, a public signal, or a complete withdrawal, tells you everything you need to know about how deeply she felt your presence when you were there. Silence always leads to a moment of truth. When you stop contacting a woman and give her the space to feel, to reflect, and to decide, the way she ultimately responds tells you everything about her true level of interest. This is the final stage where her inner thoughts and emotions are no longer hidden behind pride, testing, or subtle signs. Her actions, or her lack of them, reveal exactly where she stands. And what makes this so powerful is that you don't have to push, you don't have to guess, you don't even have to ask. Her behavior in the face of your silence answers the question for you. If her feelings were genuine, if she truly valued your presence and what you brought into her life, then the silence becomes impossible to ignore. She can't go on for too long without doing something about it. She'll either reach out directly, breaking through her own hesitation, or she'll make it clear in other ways that she doesn't want to lose the connection. She may test the waters at first with something casual, but eventually her effort shows her hand. A woman who wants you in her life won't let silence stretch endlessly. She'll choose to bridge the gap because her emotions will outweigh her pride. That's when you see her stepping forward, sometimes nervously, sometimes cautiously, but undeniably with the intention of keeping you close. On the other hand, if she doesn't feel that pull toward you, the silence confirms it. She may notice your absence at first, but over time, she adapts to it. Instead of reaching out, she becomes comfortable with the distance. She might even convince herself that it was the natural course of things, that she doesn't need to chase something that wasn't deeply important to her. Her lack of action tells you she isn't invested. And though it can be disappointing to face, it is also the clarity you need. Because when someone truly cares, silence doesn't sit comfortably for long. When they don't, silence becomes the closure. What makes this stage so defining is that it strips away all the noise and all the guesswork. Early on, when she's confused or testing her feelings, you might not know where she stands. When the power shifts, you might still wonder what she'll do with that realization. Even when she's evaluating your importance, you can't fully see the outcome yet. But in this final stage, you no longer have to wonder. Her choices, or her refusal to make any choice, become the answer. It's not about what she says in theory, it's about what she does in practice. Silence brings out honesty in a way words often can't. Sometimes, this honesty shows up in ways that surprise you. A woman who seemed indifferent before might suddenly reveal effort you never expected. She might break her own patterns, swallow her pride, and reach out because the silence proved to her that losing you was something she couldn't accept. Other times, it goes the opposite way. A woman who seemed very invested when you were constantly present may disappear once you stop reaching out because what she loved was the attention, not the person. That's the beauty of silence. It separates the temporary from the genuine, the shallow from the meaningful. And yes, this stage can be painful. It can sting when you realize she doesn't care as much as you hoped. It can hurt to see her choose to walk away rather than close the gap. But there's also freedom in that pain, because instead of wasting time in uncertainty, instead of chasing after someone who doesn't truly want to be caught, you are given clarity. Silence hands you the truth without needing long explanations. It reveals whether her heart beats for you or not. And clarity, even when it hurts, is a gift. On the flip side, when silence reveals her true interest, it becomes equally powerful, but in a different way. If she comes forward, if she makes the effort, you now know without doubt that she values what you had. You no longer have to question whether her feelings are real, because silence has already tested them and proven them genuine. That kind of confirmation strengthens the bond in a way constant contact never could, because it shows you she's willing to move past pride to protect what she doesn't want to lose. So in this final outcome, the silence has done its job. It has peeled away the layers of confusion, pride, and comfort. It has forced her to evaluate, to feel, to decide. And now it shows you the truth. Whether she chases you or lets you go, the answer is clear. Either way, you are no longer left guessing about her level of interest. Silence has spoken louder than words. Her final reaction is not just about her. It's about the truth of the connection itself.